I'd become aware of some work being done, research work being done up in Queensland, where they're making vaccines from cancer. So using your own cancer to make a true vaccine for your cancer. A true vaccine made from your own body cells and engineered to teach your immune system how to recognize the cancer and to remove it. It is that simple.
Wow.
I've said it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I found this hematologist in Brisbane, very smart guy, PhD, doctor, came out of the Queensland Institute of Medical Research, doing work on vaccines. I went to see him. I said, I'd like you to make me a vaccine. I flew to Brisbane. And he goes, I'm busy doing other vaccines for melanoma. But apparently I was very persistent. I didn't realise at the time I was, but he told me afterwards I was very persistent. So he agreed to make a vaccine for me. So I told my doctor in Peter Mac in Melbourne, professor, and he was very angry, crossed his arms and said, fuck you under your breath.
And it's going down. The tumour's going down.
There was no cancer.
There was no cancer.
Cancer never returned. Yeah.
Never returned.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, welcome. Thank you very much for coming all this way. Really excited to jump into your story. Obviously, we've spoken a little bit beforehand about your story, but I would love the audience to sort of hear about it in more detail. But so just out of curiosity, so Jeffrey, do you want to sort of give us a little rundown of your life and where you started, or?
Yes, okay. My name is Jeffrey. I was born in Chelsea in Victoria and grew up in Parkdale in the family home. So mum and dad had 3 boys and I was the middle boy. So we had a really happy upbringing, lovely parents. They just doted on their 3 boys. And I'm the middle one. Older one was David. He was a bit of a wild child and later unfortunately died from a brain tumour, which may have affected his behaviour. And then I had Ronald, my younger brother. So we had a really happy upbringing, doting parents. And mum stayed home, looked after the boys. Dad went to work at Rod's in St Kilda.
Yeah. And
that was basically their life. My dad lived for his family, so he provided for the family. Weekends we go away for, day trips down the peninsula, and mum would bring us thermos a cup of tea and things like that. And sometimes a special treat, we'd have fish and chips at Dramana on the way back. That was a real treat. And then every year we'd go to Queensland to visit Grandma who lived up there. So we drive up to Queensland, which is quite an adventure. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, very happy upbringing.
Do you think that you have a bit of a spiritual connection with the ocean? Growing up near the ocean, do you think it's?
Yeah, I've always lived near the sea. So I live in Frankston now, so we're near the sea. And our ancestors, Deslandes or Deslandes, they were actually shipbuilders in Jersey and Channel Islands, and there was a ship called Deslandes or Deslandes that came.
Oh wow!
So they sailed over from Jersey in 1854. So yeah, probably a sea connection, I guess there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
They haven't moved very far since. They went to Collingwood and Richmond, South Yarra, Parkdale, Frankston. So they went halfway across the world in 1854 on a sailing boat, and then since then we've done about 40 kilometres.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And so pretty good upbringing then, and you were previously married. You have some children, is that right? Or
yeah, got married in 1972. I had 2 girls and a boy. Yep. That stage I was just finishing off uni, so I went to Monash Uni, did an engineering degree, mechanical engineering. I wasn't too sure what I would want to do then. I'm probably still not too sure what I want to do, but anyway, I became an engineer and then finished my degree. Still didn't know what I wanted to do, so I thought, I'll go to Melbourne Uni. And so I did a master's and then I did a PhD because I still hadn't decided what exactly I wanted to do. But yeah, so I got a PhD and went out to work, yeah.
How did you find being an engineer? Was it something that you felt passionate about waking up in the morning to do, or was it sort of a job to pay the bills?
Yeah, interesting, yeah. I liked it, but looking back, I don't think it was probably the best career for me. Strangely, I find medical stuff very interesting now, and I picked it up so quickly.
Yeah.
I think, maybe I did the wrong career, but I think maybe the engineering side has helped me survive, which I'll explain a bit later.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Oh, okay, so having that sort of logical thinking, you think?
I think so, yeah, very much, yeah.
Helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, so I got a job and had the 3 children, and life went on, and children got a bit older, and for whatever reason, I became a bit dissatisfied with life, and I was probably around that 40 years of age. I had a house and 3 children, and I guess a loving wife, but
That's the dream for most people, isn't it?
But I became very dissatisfied and unhappy. So probably around the 42 years of age, which is probably a dangerous end for me. So I became very dissatisfied with what I was doing. So so I left my wife and moved out and looked for something else. And for better or for worse, I met another lady and eventually got married to her and had a boy and a girl. So I ended up with 5 children that I never planned to have any children, but they just come along. But so I've got 5 lovely children.
Do they get along? Do they have a
They do very much, but they're not, because they're 2 sets of children, they sort of, there's always a divide there.
Right.
Because they're different mothers. So there's no reason why they don't get on, but they just tend to live their own separate lives as two sort of semi-attached families.
They turn up to sort of functions together sometimes here and there.
Oh, yeah. Especially Father's Day at Dad's place or something or whatever, So I was, second marriage, 2 children, life was going well. I got a job at resources company BHP, so I moved into there and got into head office. So I had a really good position, fantastic benefits, and I was buying rental properties and renovating those on the side, and, building my wealth for the future, I guess.
Yeah.
So life was going along really, really well, but I guess, to be honest, it works a bit like a carrot. It sort of takes you where the money is, but you don't think, hang on, is that where I want to go? So I always wanted to work outside using my hands. I'm not really a great people person. So what I do, I ended up in an office in the centre of Melbourne, 36 floors up, using a computer and dealing with people. So I sort of, I guess you can't argue, but I let the carrot sort of money and benefits take me to where I was. So
do you feel like I've heard this quote where if you don't have a plan, you become somebody else's plan. Does that like resonate with you at all, like that?
That's very much, I'm not sort of a planning person, so I sit there waiting for opportunities, and the opportunity comes up and you go, oh, that must be it, and then you take that. So I had this fantastic job at BHP, company car, computer, car park, free superannuation, free medical scheme,
and
shares, employee shares, executive shares.
And as you said, like that enabled your first foray into real estate, it sounds like. So.
Yeah, I had about 15 properties at that stage.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, which I was working on, when I wasn't working at BHP. So life was really looking fantastic and had my whole life in front of me. I thought, wow, I'm immortal, da-da-da. And then sitting at work one day, age 51, I got this pain under the rib cage, and I'd been for an executive health check just a few months ago, and they said, oh, no, everything's fine. Anyway, fast forward.
How sharp was the pain, if I might ask?
It was when you breathe in, it was like, it was under the rib cage, quite sharp, very excruciating. And I went to the doctor, he said, oh, you've strained the muscle, take these tablets. I said, oh, yeah, sure, yeah. Went back to the doctor, I didn't take the tablets, got angry with me. Anyway, they did a few tests. So fast forward, it turned out to be stage 4 cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is lymphatic cancer. So they said, oh, unfortunately, it's it's a bad cancer to have, and you need to start treatment straight away. So it was like a blow to the kick in the guts. I was devastated because I had my whole life in front of me, and suddenly it's been taken away, or I may not live. Like, hang on, I'm too young, and I've got all these things I want to do, and it was the biggest.
Can I ask, like, were those thoughts like immediately, like, did they immediately come to you when you were told that, or was it more shock initially, or like, do you remember that day sort of getting that news?
Yeah, I do. I was in the doctors in Moorabbin, actually the Vietnamese doctor.
Right,
yeah.
There you go.
And his words were unfortunately, which was not a good one, but I was just in tears. I couldn't even, they wanted me to make an appointment and I couldn't even speak. I had to write something down. I was just totally distraught, I suppose. Yeah, with anger, not anger. What's the word? Distraught with. I've lost the words, but
Grief, maybe?
grief. That's the
Grief.
good.
Yeah.
That's the one. Grief. Yeah, overcome with grief
Yeah.
because suddenly my life wasn't in my control. You know, I might die, and as I drove away,
And I think with like having all these, like you were saying to me, you had all these things ticked off. You know, you had the superannuation, you had the job,
Yeah.
and that's the control, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's what attracts a lot of people to pursuing this sort of career, the 9 to 5, you know, and everything. It's the control,
yeah,
right?
I'd lost control because if you're dead, then these things you can't take them with you apparently. So I had my life had been mapped out for me, and then it was put in at grave risk, and it was quite a serious cancer. So as a drug,
Did they give you any idea of what you're about to go through in that sitting? Did they say expect this or this amount of time, or was it just this is what it is? And
go and see the specialist, as soon as you can, and
Yeah.
yeah. So as I drove away, I said to myself, I'm going to leave my job and make as many changes as possible. Because
Nice.
obviously, there's something about my life at that stage which wasn't got to be wrong because, you know, I've got in this situation. How did this cancer come about? So I decided straight away never to go back to work.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. You know, and it could be as simple as sitting down all day, you know, or, you know, just like the stress of being in those sort of confined spaces for long periods of time,
Yeah.
eating, you know, how was your diet? Was the diet in that sort of environment?
Well, thinking back, I was under stress at work because you're working long hours and then you get home and the dinner's been sitting on the stove for a couple of hours and your wife said, "Oh, your dinner's on the stove." Rah, rah, rah. So I was in I probably didn't mention, it wasn't a very harmonious second marriage. She was a very angry woman with a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Is this being recorded? That's all right.
We can cut that bit out if we
No,
have
you
to.
could leave it in. It was a very unhappy household, a lot of tension in the air, a lot of, you know, that sort of hit and you can cut it with a knife.
Yeah.
So a lot of anger in the house and dinner would be sitting on the stove. So nutrition was probably not the best. And also living under a constant stress situation is not good for your health either.
How much of that contempt or that sort of build up do you think comes from, you know, your responsibility with work, or was there just other things going on as well?
Other things going on, yeah.
Was it like poor communication, do you think, or like not being honest about feelings and connecting and
Poor communication, but how can I say it? My wife had a lot of issues from her from her upbringing.
And if she's not working on those, then they become your issues essentially. If they're not being worked on actively and consciously by that person, you know, how are my behaviors actually affecting the other people in my life? You know, a lot of people don't stop to think like that sometimes, right?
Yeah, it's a bit hard too because you're an engineer and you're a man. You know, it's some of those fluffy communication and psychological things are very hard, you know, to deal with, and you haven't been trained. So I'm all to deal with the black and white. You know, fix this, do that.
Yep.
So these are, so they were bubbling away in the background of the home. Yeah. So it probably may have had an effect on my health. Who knows?
So you were driving home and you were thinking, okay, I'm going to make these changes. And then after that, you had the specialist appointment, obviously. What happened there?
Yeah, went to see the specialist and he outlined that we need to start chemotherapy straight away and that the disease is actually incurable. It has a good response to chemotherapy, but longer term it's very likely to come back, so it has a high relapse rate. Basically, it's a nice way of saying high relapse means we can't cure it, basically, because it's a bit like couch grass in your garden. You can kill it or pull it out or weed kill it, but you have to look a few weeks later and it starts growing back again because there's roots there that they can't get.
Right.
So my cancer was called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it's a disease of the white blood cells.
Yep.
And so it's...
You mentioned it's stage 4. What is that? Is spread beyond the original site?
That's right, yeah. Stage 1 and where it's contained in the original site. But because mine have been undetected for so long, which is not unusual, it's spread to both sides of the diaphragm, within my bone marrow, had what's called the BCL2 gene relocation. So had this gene corruption in it.
Yep.
And in the spleen, in the bone marrow. So, it's quite advanced through the body.
Yeah.
And because it's through your body, surgery won't fix it because you can't. It's everywhere. So it's a systemic approach that needs to eradicate it, which is why they give you chemotherapy.
I'm curious. So, like you mentioned, life was going really well, and you had these properties, and you were at the height of your career.
Yeah.
What was your plans like for like your immediate plans before finding out the diagnosis, and how did things change physically and emotionally like straight after the diagnosis?
Yeah, well, up until diagnosis, you're sort of expanding, and then diagnosed, you think, hang on, I might die.
Yeah.
So even to this day, you're on a different path. You're sort of contracting.
Yeah.
So I can't make long-term plans. I could have, thinking back now, 24 years ago it was, I could have trained to be a doctor, but you didn't do it at that stage because I'm going to be dead in a year. What's the point of doing any long-term planning? So you're still on a very short-term time horizon. Back then it was only a few months, and then maybe got the 6 months in a year. Now it's maybe a couple of years. So it very, very much affects your life. You're planning it forward. Yeah.
Do you have I was just going to say, do you have a more appreciation for life, I guess? Like, I mean, obviously, but do you find now are you more present when you're doing things, when you're interacting with people? Do you find?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. I enjoy life. I thank the universe every day for being alive, and I'm almost 76, and I'm so freaking healthy.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
I'm the healthiest I've ever been in my whole life.
That's incredible.
Nothing I can't do, and so I really appreciate every day because it's a blessing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to go back. So you're driving home.
Yeah.
You've got this diagnosis now, and you go to the specialist. When you sat down with the specialist, and he said basically, this is incurable, right? Did he give you a time frame of estimating like how long you've got left? Did he say, right, get everything in order? And
possibly without chemotherapy starting, it would have been a few months, but he said, probably, I think 90% of people are dead within 5 years with this disease. So,
wow.
So it wasn't immediate death, but so 90% are dead within 5 years.
So you're the 10%, and then the 1%, and then the 0.1%.
I'm in that very tail.
So at first, did you feel as though, okay, this is diagnosis, there's this huge mountain over that's shadowing me now. Did you feel at first like a victim at first, or was it just straight away like, nah, that's it. It's game time.
Very early on I felt like a victim and very sad, very depressed, sat in the chair and many tears, in my eyes, and watching sad songs on YouTube or something or whatever. But after a week or so you think, oh, bugger this, I've just got to, get on with it. You've had your sad time. Yep. You've got to then now go into chemotherapy and give it everything you've got. So I had to start. I decided to start chemotherapy and give it all my best shot.
And how did the chemotherapy go?
It was tough, but it's not as bad as people make out. You just turn up at the clinic and they put a needle in your arm and drip all this poison in, and you go home feeling sick as a dog.
I wonder, like, before like getting the chemo, what are the considerations? What are the doctors advising you? Is there even a consideration of whether you do the chemo or you don't do the chemo? Like, is that a conversation?
No. Basically, you have to have chemo. You had massive tumours, size of an orange in my abdomen, pushing on the heart. So you need to start the chemo pretty soon. Not immediately, but within a few weeks. Yeah.
And that kills everything, right? All the cells, bad cells and good cells. It just wipes out everything through.
Yeah, chemo is very indiscriminate. So it looks for actively dividing cells. So cancer cells are actively dividing, like your cells are multiplying all the time. Cancer cells are actively dividing, so it targets those, but also the lining of your mouth, the lining of your stomach, your hair. So it's very indiscriminate. So it takes a lot of collateral damage.
Yeah.
And also impairs your immune system as well, which is pretty handy for fighting cancers. So it has some side effects, But it's a necessary evil, I guess,
Yeah. So you were saying you got home, sick, it's not that bad, but you go home sick as a dog.
Yeah.
How long did that last?
Well, a couple of days, and then you start feeling a bit better, and then another 3 weeks you go back more chemo again. So it's like a cycle. So yeah, it takes about a week after chemo to come back to normal, and then and as you go along, you lose your hair, and so I lost all my hair except for my eyebrows. I would have been happy to lose those.
Oh, they're awesome.
But all the rest of the body hair. But I suppose you got a free Brazilian for nothing. That's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah.
I've got a question. So, like, most people can understand like the burden of like finding out the diagnosis. On the other side of the coin, is there like anything like freeing that you feel like sort of knowing that you've got more intention or more purpose with your life after sort of finding out you've got, I guess, like less time?
Less time. I guess it's it's taught me to be kind to people and don't be so mean, and help people in need, and because you've been given the gift, I suppose, of life now. I have, so it has taught me that. I'm not sure that's what you're asking.
Yeah, probably like in the sense that certain things that you found really important and sort of people's opinions, or like your job, or like accumulating your assets for retirement, and all those sort of things.
Yeah, I think very much so. Your perspectives change. You sort of laugh at what people complain about. It's rained today and my car's got. I just washed it yesterday. Now it's got a few drops of dust on it. Or things that people complain about. You think, very much into perspective. Yeah, and I think things like assets and things, you can see how.
What about for you personally? Was there anything that you held like very dearly and like you felt like was super important and realized that wasn't important to you personally?
Oh, well, the number one was my career.
Your career.
I had a PhD. I had this fantastic career with all these benefits, and it meant nothing overnight. Completely, everything I'd strived for was that career, to feed my family, to be successful, to retire with a good super, whatever. That was just gone in a heartbeat, because it meant nothing. So I thought, no. And what I was doing is focusing on my survival, which is, warmth and love and shelter. The rest of it's not important, is it? So no, career disappeared overnight, never came back.
Wow, that's so crazy. And I guess this is really good for people listening. Is just like if you find yourself in a situation where you are so hyper focused and putting all this time, maybe this is a bit of a situation to wake up and go, hey, actually, maybe go spend that day with your daughter and in the park. Maybe that's that's an example I give. I just wanted to actually ask the question though, Jeffrey, and I wanted to know this. So, and I will go back a little bit. You said that your mum was somewhat religious. Is that right? She was a religious. Are you yourself religious? And what religion did your mum follow?
She was Church of Christ, but I'm not religious and such, but I do believe in there's some very smart person out there. Person, not the word. There's some entity out there who made us all, who's so far smarter than us. It's not funny. So there's sort of I call it the universe, but
God, I used to say the universe too. Now I'm starting to say God. It's just easier that way sometimes.
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
There was some super intelligence there, like.
Definitely. No,
If I could explain a bit, maybe having had cancer 7 times over 24 years and survived, I've sort of understood a lot about the human body. When I look at the complexity of the human body, it is so freaking, can you use that word? It is so complex.
We can swear on here, by the way.
Yeah. It is.
It's fucking.
If you just take our human body as one example on this earth, the complexity that's gone into it, the design, it's can't be done by chance. Now, let me explain, like our immune system, which protects us against diseases. It has these B cells, T cells, natural killer cells, all these other cells, and it's looking at everything coming in our bloodstream and checking it and eating it up, throwing it out. It's protecting us from disease every second of the day. And I see a doctor in Japan, Dr. Teranuma, who's arguably the most learned person in our immune system and cancer. And he's had the benefit of all mankind's research up to this time. I said, how much do you understand about the immune system? He said about 60%. So if the smartest man in the world still only can understand 60% of how it works, it means it's been made by some person a lot smarter than any man that's been born on this earth so far. So it doesn't mean, you could argue that's by chance, but it is. And that's just our one system, It's got our digestive system, how it works, Yeah. You eat food, goes down your stomach. Oh, it's got some meat there. Well, we need some hydrochloric acid. Hang on, that would burn through our stomach. No, we'll line your stomach with a mucus so the hydrochloric acid doesn't burn a hole in your stomach. And then the food goes down. We add some sugar. We add some insulin from the pancreas. A bit of fat. We'll add some bile, and it goes down. Let's take that bile back. Let's not waste the bile down the toilet. So it recycles the bile, pulls it back, uses it again. And it's sort of
It's crazy.
Just our digestive system is incredibly complex.
It's very humbling. It's very humbling. I think so. Do you remember moments in your journey where you felt as though God answered you when you were sort of asking for help?
Not moments, but I guess generally I think there was he was looking after me, in a quiet way,
Because I had a situation that we've probably, you when you met me, where I went pretty downhill. I'd say I had a mental breakdown where I lost my role I lost my job and my partner, and I went down to 58 kilograms.
Yeah.
When
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember asking God and praying every day that I'd get better. And there was this one day, always gets me. I'm so emotional. Every time I just remember when everything flipped, and it was like the prayers were answered. And it felt almost impossible. And obviously it's no comparison here because, what you were going through is obviously far more dangerous. But I mean, I in a way almost lost my mind, I guess, in many ways. And it felt like I got another chance at life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I felt like at that point, I wasn't really religious up until that point. And then afterwards, I've started rethinking everything. Even up until this day, I'm just like, wow. There's something else out there that's guiding.
Yeah.
Is pulling the strings, not pulling the strings so much as maybe.
I think when you describe it, it almost sounds like you're surrendering what the outcome is going to be to somebody else. So that kind of frees you from trying to control the aspects of your life.
That too, but I almost feel like there's more to it. There's like a spiritual connection. Like, how do I? Yeah. Things happen that just were too coincidentally in line, and you probably might feel the same way.
Yeah,
it's like, how did that just happen after that? I've been thinking and imagining this, and now I'm sitting here, and it's here.
Yeah,
what sort of witchery is going on here? Like that's how it felt for me.
I feel there's invisible threads between people. Like Caden, I was thinking of Caden. I'm going up to Kyneton, and I was going to say, should I message Caden and ask the drop? Maybe Tess wants to come up, his mum, drop her off, but I didn't do it. And then next minute, Caden messaged me, "How you going, mate?" Da 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 da.
His ears were firing.
So is that coincidence, or is it, invisible strings being pulled between people?
And I feel like when you go through these sort of very intense, tragic moments, maybe you're more open to seeing those things. I feel like, in a way, my mind before I got really sick, I would always just pass things off like, that's just a coincidence. That's not like, if a spiritual thing happens in my life, it's just, but now I can see things. Like there was a situation where, I don't know if I can share this, I guess, but my partner's sister, her son passed away, and we went to celebrate during birth, celebrate that birthday. And we all brought white flowers, and just somehow a white butterfly came into the house and sat right where the shrine was. What are the chances of that happening?
I've heard so many stories like that. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So there's like, it's almost like nature talks to you, you know, or God talks to you through our interactions that we have. And so you said you felt like there were times that were there any moments where you're like, wow? Because like there would be so many moments in this process because you went from, you know, stage 4 cancer and like you said, a 5-year prognosis to, or whatever it was, to here.
Yeah, but there's quite a few steps in that process.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. I guess there wasn't one moment, but I guess there was a general feeling that my time wasn't up yet, and someone was looking after me in a quiet way. But but he jumped through a few hoops on the way. Yeah.
What was so? You did the chemo.
Yes, I had chemo. Yeah, so chemo was all clear after chemo. A few masses still left, but they were supposedly not active.
Yeah.
So things were looking good.
I've got a question. So, you know, you would have relied on some support systems, like either people or, you know, your own systems. What got you through that recovery process, like initially? Could you talk to that a little bit?
Support systems, well, for lymphoma in those days, there was no support group because it's a fairly rare cancer, supposed to be. Most of your friends from work drop away because you don't go to work anymore. So, yeah, probably not a lot of support, really. No.
So then did you create your own sort of systems to, you know, sort of protect your mindset, like through those periods?
Yeah, I used to communicate with people with, in those days, it sounds funny, but email. So emailing out you know, a podcast of how I was doing and stuff. So people there was a support network through email. Some of those people, obviously from my workplace and friends. So yeah, it was sort of sounds funny sending emails out, doesn't it? And then people reading and then sending it back.
Remember those email chains that came in? If you don't email this chain, you will get, you will die.
I remember those, yeah. Yeah, so probably not a huge amount of support, but yeah.
I wanted to go back just quickly. So you've had chemo, and it's been successful, right? At what point did you decide to start seeking the alternative therapy? When was that point? Was it after a year or 2 years after the chemo, or
5 years? Yeah.
5 years.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened? Had the chemo, saying all clear, go home and twiddle your thumbs, and then about 6 months later, lump in my mouth. I thought, oh, that's a bit suspicious. So I went to the doctor. He said, oh, no. Went back to the specialist. He said, oh, no, it's just a blocked saliva gland or something. I said, oh, yeah, sure. Anyway, so it's got a bit bigger. So I went back to the surgeon. I said, take it out. He took it out, and then they did a pathology, and the lymphoma was back again. And the specialist rang up, hi, cancer's back. Well, I told you it was back. You know, didn't listen to me, did you? You know, but he was a bit angry. But anyway, so it was back in the mouth. So we had started a new therapy called Mabthera, which is a monoclonal antibody. It's like a light chemotherapy. So we had that, and then it was all good until Father's Day 2004. So that was about 5 years later, sitting in bed and putting my hands down on my groin as men do. I don't know. It's a lump there. Oh, there's a lump there. I said, oh, bloody hell. Yeah. So the lymphoma had returned in lymph nodes in the inguinal area, both sides of my groin.
Yeah.
So we had Mabthera again, and that lasted about 9 months, and it was back again and back in the groin again. So we had chemotherapy again. When you have one lot of chemo, the cancer gets resistant to that, so you've got to give it a different type of chemo. So you got to trick it with a new. So we had a different type of chemo then, and then came back a few months later as well. So that would come back 4 times. So
wow. So it was just getting more aggressive, basically, at this point.
Not aggressive, but persistent. So
yep.
I was catching it each time. Each time I was telling the doctor, yes, it's back, before they told me. But it was like small disease progressing and becoming resistant to chemo. So that's what normally lymphoma does. It becomes resistant to chemotherapy. So, and then it starts growing. And so it's like a persistence, I suppose. So it might come back 4 times in 5 years. So
You just got to keep getting at it. Yeah, you got to be on top of it, I guess.
that's when I thought, well, bugger this. Like Einstein said, it's stupidity is a definition of stupidity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
So if chemo hadn't worked 4 times, not going to work 5 times, is it? So I said, fuck this. I've got to find something different, look outside the box, attack it from an engineering point of view, or, there's no point giving it more chemo if chemo hasn't worked now. You've got to outsmart it.
Yeah.
Cancer's become smart, and it's sort of, okay, here comes chemo, it's sort of, cancer sort of becomes very sneaky, and so it evades your immune system and it keeps growing. So I'd become aware of some work being done, research work being done up in Queensland, where they're making vaccines from cancer. So using your own cancer to make a true vaccine for your cancer. So I'm not talking about a generic vaccine like the COVID vaccine, which is another story. That's something else. But this is
We'll do this podcast again.
I'm talking about a true vaccine made from your own body cells and engineered to teach your immune system how to recognise a cancer and to remove it. It is that simple.
Wow.
I've said it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I found this haematologist in Brisbane, very smart guy, PhD, doctor, came out of the Queensland Institute of Medical Research, doing work on vaccines. So I went to see him. I said, I'd like you to make me a vaccine. I flew to Brisbane. And he goes, I'm busy doing other vaccines for melanoma. But apparently I was very persistent. I didn't realise at the time I was, but he told me afterwards I was very persistent. So he agreed to make a vaccine for me.
Wow.
So I told my doctor in Peter Mac in Melbourne, professor, and he was very angry, crossed his arms and said, fuck you under your breath.
Why?
Because I wasn't following his but his next course of action, which was to have a stem cell transplant.
Right.
So when chemotherapy fails, the next level of treatment is a stem cell transplant and then a high-dose chemo. So what they do is you have very high-dose chemotherapy, which would otherwise kills your immune system, and then they regenerate your immune system with stem cells. Now, there's 2 ways of having it. You can have a allogeneic one, which is from a donor. The problem with that is you reject those stem cells and you die from graft versus host. Or you have a autologous transplant, which is your own cells collected. But the trouble with that is if there's one cancer cell and those your own stem cells that's been collected, your own stem cells are then reinfused. If there's one cancer cell in there, then you're stuffed because the cancer will grow unabated.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't like either option. So he was very angry. I said, no, I'm going to Queensland and I'm having this vaccine and it's going to work. So I flew to Brisbane and they had treatment over 3 months and it was all fine. Just a simple injection in the leg, walk in, walk out, no side effects at all. If anything, maybe anti-aging, we think, is one of the side effects from it.
That's terrible.
Yeah. So they use a thing called dendritic cells in your blood and a sample of the tumour, which is taken in an operation, and they process it in the lab to make little vials of vaccine injected into your leg. And in later stages, he added a thing called, I forget, he adds a compound which causes inflammation. So he mixes that with it and pokes injection into the leg under the skin. So when this inflammation, this little T cells come running up and say, what the fuck's going on here? Because it's like poking an ant's nest. The ants come running up to see what's going on. So these little T cells come and run up to your leg to see this, and that forms a welt. And they take the vaccine then back to the lymph nodes.
Oh, wow, that's so smart.
Yeah, very smart. So I had treatment over 3 months. He said, we've got 25 vials left. He said, why don't you come up every 2 months? And we don't know what we're doing, he said, but it's all experimental. It wasn't proven. I said, yep, I'll come up every 2 months. So I came up every 2 months to Brisbane, had an injection, flew home. Then he still had then it was about 2010. I said, I've got a third of the tumour still left in the freezer. So he made up another 19 doses, I think. And one by one went to Brisbane, and then towards the end, we were running out of vaccine. We started stretching out the time from 2 months to 3 months to 4 months. So 2015, we had the last injection.
So it's working, obviously, because it's 2015 right now, and it's going down. The tumour's going down.
There was no cancer.
There was no cancer.
Cancer never returned. Yeah.
Never returned.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, this treatment was not recognised on any level, I guess, by the medical
Still
community.
considered experimental.
Still to this day,
Yep.
Even though it works.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep. So 2015.
How can it be experimental now? You're living proof it's not an experiment.
Yeah, but for medicine, there's like a clinical trial process. So you need to set up control groups, one having the vaccine, another group not having the vaccine. It takes years. But I couldn't wait for a clinical trial. I'd be fucking dead.
Are they working on clinical trials now for this? Because surely there's someone out there.
People all over the world are working on vaccines, but there's still nothing really conclusive. Yeah. But I know for me, it worked.
It worked.
Yeah.
And are there other people now using that same therapy?
A doctor in Brisbane has stopped doing it, but he's retired. But there's all sorts of work going on all sorts of vaccines all over the world. Yeah.
Which acts similar to what the treatment that you were using?
Similar, yeah. Some of the treatments, they don't like to use a piece of your own tumour, so they're trying to make it easier to manufacture by using a generic piece of tumour. So even though I'm not a doctor, I think using your own cells is the key, because a cancer is like a snowflake.
Yeah.
There's no two snowflakes alike. So every cancer is very different. So by using your own cancer, they've got what's called an idiotype vaccine, which has all the little genetic defects and variations of your cancer. So
then your T cells recognize that, and then they can attack the cancer, because that's the biggest issue, isn't it? Is it the T cells that don't recognize the actual cancer?
Yeah, the immune cells.
The immune cells, yeah.
The immune system doesn't recognize your cancer because cancer is quite sneaky. So what the vaccine does is it teaches your immune system what the cancer cell looks like. So it's a bit like a lock and a key. So it's presenting a certain lock, and these cells coming along so it's like a lock and a key. So the cancer is like a lock, and the vaccine's like a key. So it's running around and goes check, knock, and it goes click. Yes, got one.
Right one.
So when it locks onto it and forms a different shaped cell, and then the body says that cell's not normal. Come and take it out. So they have these other cells come along, eat it up.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's tagging your cancer cells with like a lock and key mechanism. So it's simple as that. It's all done through the shape of the cell. Yeah.
So now he's retired. Where are you still using that same treatment to this day, or is it different now? Have you sort of?
Well, I've been to Japan, had similar treatment in Japan. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. For a second cancer that I've had, which I'll get onto in a minute. Yeah.
If I could ask, just going back, so I want to understand, what was your thought process? Obviously, you'd made the right decision by seeing that doctor in Brisbane, but what was going through your process to, make the ultimate decision that, what you knew was better than what the doctor was recommending, in terms of, there's this stem cell transfusion, which is the preferred option by, your existing doctor. Was it the skepticism about the incorrect diagnosis in the mouth and all this stuff that led up to you feeling like you knew your body better than these doctors, or?
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Because the professor in Melbourne was a very trained person, and I'm saying I'm ignoring your recommendation. I'm going this route. I can't really explain what led me to that decision. It was just so natural to me that chemotherapy's not working. You've got to outsmart it. You've got to be smart, outsmart the cancer. Something led to me to saying I'm going for that vaccine and it's going to work. But I don't really know what that thought process was. But it's quite a bold decision, I suppose.
It's huge. It's a huge decision.
I'm ignoring this
because you're the best doctor in the world in this in this sort of field, and you're just saying, nah, that's massive.
Yeah, I've got no medical
and that's just
training.
like take risk, right? Like that's the whole take risk, or for good things to happen in life, to get ahead, to change your situation, you got to take risk, right? And here is a perfect example of
I thought, what can you? Nothing to lose. The very worst you can do is nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't burn any bridges. So I thought, I don't know, it just made perfect sense to me. But it's probably more of an engineering solution, I suppose. Yeah, it was a bold decision, but it just natural.
When it started working, did you feel at that point maybe the universe? Did you feel like, wow? Any amazing feelings at that point when it was working at all? Like I just did a cheat code and it worked. Like I just entered a cheat code in life.
Yeah, I guess so. I was sort of having a bit of feedback that it was working on the road. Yeah, but it was sort of a bit uncertain times. You know, time was going on. Well, cancer hasn't come back. A bit more time, cancer hasn't come back. But yeah, I guess I got a general feeling that I was very positive that it was going to work because cost me, had to pay for it, $30,000 or $10,000. That's a lot of money in those days. And it's going to work. It cost me $10,000 plus, 52 trips to Brisbane. But to my credit, I suppose, I'm very determined. So some people would have had a few injections and said, "Oh, it's working. I won't worry coming back. It's too much trouble." But I did, 52 trips, arrived at the doctor's surgery on the hour. Not many people would do that over so many years, but. Yeah.
From speaking to Caden earlier, he mentioned that a lot of, like you being here today is being stubborn and choosing your own path, right? What advice would you have to somebody finding out their prognosis of a late stage cancer today? Like if they came to you, "Hey, Jeff, what advice do you have for me?" What would you say to them?
Yeah, well, be stubborn, be resolute. I suppose when you're diagnosed with cancer, it's quite natural to be shocked and have that grief and so forth. But okay, go through that process. But then you say, "Bugger it, I'm going to give this everything I've got." So my advice is to be strong, resolute, never give up, determined, look for all avenues, look for all sorts of medical-based treatments, and if your doctor can't offer a cure, then keep looking for ways of cure. Yeah.
So don't just take the first thing that's offered as it. There's other options. You've got a doctor, and obviously they are skilled, and you do have to listen to medical advice.
Yeah.
But there is more out there. There are other options out there that you may not be aware of, and it's worth looking for those. Essentially.
Yeah. I guess it's very much after the initial shock, become very, contact support organisations for information, get on the internet, find out as much as you can about the cancer because I think knowledge is king, and then become like the driver of instead of being driven by the system, you become the driver. So
it's funny you say that. I was just thinking you've got people who are just like passengers and drivers, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but you sort of use that analogy that I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, become the driver. So drive your own bus. This is my life. Don't rely on doctors to sort of tell you what to do all the time. You've got to drive your case and get the very best treatment you can. And if the treatment that they're giving you is not working, well, ask for alternative treatments. And even if the treatments aren't proven, if it seems to have, a little bit of logic to it, then maybe it's worth a trial. But
so that treatment, you would, was it just the treatment, do you think, that took you over the edge, or did you change anything about your diet, your lifestyle as well, that you thought maybe also played into the recovery?
Well, I left a toxic marriage, so that may have had an effect. But so I think improve your diet and improve your stress levels and things like that as much as you can. Yeah, so I did that. So,
did you exercise regularly?
I'm sort of out every day, but don't go to the gym or anything. But keep out fit and active is quite handy. But
what were the changes in the diet? Eat more lettuce.
Eat more lettuce.
Cut out. I don't want to say the name of the franchise, but the Big M, perhaps.
Golden.
We'll get sued. Just leave us alone. If you cut out the junk food, the fast food,
I probably didn't have too much junk. Look,
Yeah.
I had a pretty healthy diet anyway.
to begin with.
Yeah. People with cancer don't necessarily get it because they've got a bad diet. It's just
Yep.
it's bad luck or whatever reason. But yeah. So I changed the diet a little bit, but obviously I don't smoke, but I still drink a little bit, but you still got to live. But yeah.
What sort of resources were you looking at, like when you're doing your own research? I mean, do you think the research that you would look into now would be different to what it was 20 years ago? Like, would you still go on the internet and Google, or was there books?
We didn't
or
have Reddit then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably for the better.
Yeah, I think just go on the internet and
Yeah.
Google it. Yeah.
Like like peer-reviewed articles, that sort of thing?
Some of
or-
those, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I suppose I was just lucky, instead of word. Though I came across this doctor who was doing the research. So is that
How
luck?
did you find him again? Sorry, was it on the in the newspaper at the time, or was it just?
Well, I mentioned in 1999 there was no lymphoma support organisation, and
Yeah.
then we looked at forming one. So through that, I was up in Brisbane having meetings with these people, looking at forming a meeting. And
Right.
one of the guys who was involved, he was working he had lymphoma. He was a GP, but he was working in this research place. So he took me through the labs one day. He said to me, if my lymphoma ever came back, this is what I'd have the vaccine is. And then, of course, my lymphoma came back sometime later. I thought, there's my answer. So
That's
it was
crazy.
through that introduction to him. I guess that's what that would have stuck in my head. And I didn't know a few years later I'd get lymphoma again. So it was sort of, I guess, was that moment that.
Did it feel like a movie? Because it sounds like, just like things just happened. You like when you decided and you make that decision, you just determine, you're persistent, and then life starts. The obstacles are there, but like these answers are coming, and
seemed very natural, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So just obvious that that's what I try, yeah. But I gave it everything I got, and So 2015, and we ran out of vaccine. So because we had no more cancer, they couldn't make any more vaccine. We had nothing left in the fridge. I said to the doctor, "What then?" He said, "Don't worry, we have these wonderful cells called memory T cells. So part of our amazing body, your body remembers every disease you've ever had in your life. And it's got that
Wow.
it's got a little computer there, little storage area, and it stores that recipe for those antibodies. So say you've had mumps, it's got the mumps antibody stored in your little computer memory.
wow.
And if it sees mumps, it says, "Oh, mumps, yeah, Caden had that in 1956." Or he was born. And it pulls out, sends out an order for so many million cells to that specification, and your body runs away, makes those antibodies, and it fixes the mumps again. So in my case, they've got the recipe for the cancer vaccine in the memory bank. You said your body should be able to make that with these memory T cells. So it's tucked away in the memory bank. If it ever sees that type of cancer again, then it'll make the vaccine automatically. The antibodies on it. That's part of our amazing immune system.
Yeah, I think we definitely have to do another podcast just based on your medical knowledge, because it's fascinating. It is fascinating because I feel like do you feel like the more you learn about the way the body works in a scientific way, the more you start to learn about life itself, and like, do you find yourself looking for answers in a more philosophical way, like why are we here? Or that's, you know what I mean? Like, do you feel like you're getting closer to anything when you learn all this?
Why are we here? That's a very good, you often think about that question in the middle of the night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting one.
Why are we here, Jeffrey?
One day we will find out. No, I don't know the answer. No, I've never met anyone who knows the answer. But yeah,
No.
but our immune system is so amazing. Yeah. So that was 2015. So that incurable stage 4 cancer is still absent to this day. So we're now talking 2023. So 24 and a half years later, still gone. So that is what they call a cure. So my doctor in Peter Mac, nameless, he said, yes, unequivocally it's been effective for me, the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, as you get, hard to explain, but it's what's called a durable remission. So if you're going to relapse from cancer, you generally relapse in the first 5 years.
Yeah.
and as time goes out to 10 years, the sort of survival curve becomes parallel to the asymptote, and it keeps going parallel. So he said, you're now 15, whatever years out. It's very, very unlikely that you're going to relapse now because you would have relapsed by now. So it's sort of
so your body probably knows, like it's probably eradicated it.
It's got it sorted,
Yeah.
I'm curious. What are there any like misconceptions around like cancer, the journey, the treatments that you feel like people might sort of misunderstand that sort of going through the process you can sort of share? Does anything come to mind?
No.
Not really. It's pretty much what.
Yeah, I think chemo is a big misconception. A lot of people are so fearful of chemo. Yeah. Oh, I don't want to have chemo. It's so bad. My hair's going to fall out. Just fucking go and have it. Don't bloody. It's not that bad. There are different, types of chemo and different severities. But if that's what's needed, just fucking do it. Don't bloody. Don't give it everything you've got. But
what I'm hearing from you, Jeffrey, is you still trust the medical specialists up until a point where in your situation, you had to make a sort of a drastic change. So there is a lot of good in our system still, but it's only so effective. And then now sometimes you're going to have to try to find alternative ways.
I very much trust the medical system. But if your doctor can't give you a cure for the cancer you've got, what's the point of going home and dying? Give it everything you've got. Do your research. Find people who can offer you some hope, because apparently when you leave this earth, you take nothing with you. So, if you've got $100,000 in the bank, you're lucky enough to have, then why not look at spending some of that on getting better treatment or different treatment? So give it everything you've got. But because my story goes on, because I'm completely cured from the lymphoma, but then 2018, I had another gift from the universe. Ate a meal, became very full. My stomach was full, food wasn't going down. I had a small bowel blockage, and they discovered a new cancer, a new gift from the universe. They thought, okay, the first one didn't get you, we're going to get you. We'll try a different one. So it hit me with another incurable cancer called a neuroendocrine tumour in the small intestine, which had spread to the lymph nodes around the area. So I thought, it was a bit of a blow, but I thought, you know what? You've given this cancer to someone who knows exactly what they're doing. So
wow. Yeah.
I instructed the surgeon I went to Brisbane to see the doctor, but he was retiring and not able to help me because he's a hematologist anyway, not a neuroendocrine tumour GI sort of specialist. But so I had a vaccine made in Japan. So I went to Japan and had a tumour excised here, sent to Japan in dry ice. I flew to Japan and took out the dendritic cells. So I had vaccine made in Japan. And then so I had half my treatment, but then COVID came along and stopped me travelling for the rest of it. And so, and then the cancer came back a few years later, so 2019, 20, I think it came back. Yeah. So that's a work in progress. So I've had the vaccine made in Japan interrupted.
Yeah.
The doctor also does what's called natural killer cell therapy. So have these amazing immune cells called natural killer cells given to your body by who made us? Mother Nature, was it? Yeah. And these are special cells, and they're quite unusual. The other cells I'm talking about, they have to be presented with a antigen, a picture of the bad guy to make them, this is the bad guy, go and look for it. But the natural killer cells, they're able to recognise cancer cells without any training. Wow. So they're quite special. But as you get older, your natural killer cells decline in numbers. So what he does is pull out your natural killer cells from your blood, grow them in the lab, and then reinfuse them. And that boosts your immune system for these natural killing cells. So I've had natural killer cells plus the vaccine in Japan. So So I've had that.
That was recently, did you not, in the last, you went to...
Yeah, February this year I went back for the final lot once the COVID drama lifted and you were able to travel. I've finished that treatment in Japan. And then more recently, I've been to Thailand to a clinic there called Verita Life Clinic, where they do alternative medical treatments such as hypothermia, very strict diet, low dose chemo, off-label drugs, intravenous injections like vitamin C, curcumin. So a sort of more natural thing, but basically it's an intensive, holistic treatment where they're giving the cancer nothing to eat, they're giving it nowhere to live, driving it out of home, and then they're killing it when it's running around the bloodstream. So that's quite an interesting thing. And that's, again, sort of unproven, but the doctor there takes on very difficult cases and gets really, really good results. And people with brain tumours, breast cancer, and pancreatic cancer still living because of that treatment now. I'm not a medical doctor. I can't recommend doctors treatments, but, if you're dying, you think, well, maybe have a look at going to a clinic such as that and having some alternate treatment. If your doctors in Melbourne wherever you are, can't offer you hope and cure, then why go home and die? Say, bugger that all. I'm not ready to die yet. I'm going to give it all I've got. So, so I had a 4-week stint in Thailand recently. And as a result of that, my tumour marker came down by 25% and it's now in the normal range.
Wow.
So I've still got a little bit of cancer in some of the lymph nodes from this neuroendocrine tumour that I'm working on. So, But I'm basically, my belief is your immune system is the key to curing your cancer. So you get your immune system working properly and to recognise the cancer, then it's perfectly capable of doing that. Yeah.
So that's the trickiest part, I guess, is our technology is sort of catching up and figuring out how to help our immune system identify these cancer cells. But previously, we didn't have that ability to do that. And these alternative treatments are basically trying to help your immune system to eradicate.
Exactly. In
We
fact,
were just like, let's nuke everything. Just nuke it all.
Yeah, chemotherapy actually destroys your immune system, so it's killing the very cells that you need.
Not to bash chemotherapy, but like it's very smart. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, like, that's our approach was to just sort of nuke through. But now we're starting to get a little bit more intelligent about the way we do it. And you're an example of this. Is let's figure out how we can get the immune system to, identify it, work for you, because it's extremely powerful, like you're saying.
Do you feel like it's just a matter of time that science finds a vaccine or a treatment to cancer across the board, or do you think we're still quite far away from that?
There's people working all over the world on vaccines, and I think it's still quite a while away. But I think it is the key. One of the problems is, when I say problem, is pharmaceutical companies like to produce like drugs that, like a sausage machine. So they want to produce a generic drug that everybody takes.
That works for everyone.
Works for everybody.
One solution for everyone.
Yeah. But to do a vaccine is quite labour intensive. So you've got to take you've got to have a Hep C test, HIV test. I'm not a drug user. I don't have HIV, but you've got to, if your cells are contaminated, they won't deal within the lab. Take out your cells. They've got to be very carefully controlled, kept clean, and then not mixed with anyone else's cells. So
there's a long list of criteria.
Yeah, it's a very quality controlled thing. So they've got to engineer your cells in the laboratory and then give them back to the right person. So if any of those steps are broken, you're stuffed, you have a bad reaction and die from anaphylactic shock or something. So you can see why that process is quite labour intensive and doesn't suit the whole world, but like a drug company. So I can sort of see the dilemma.
I guess there's a big cost associated with trying to develop a cure, and unless you can, make it profitable, then it's awful. Sort of, it doesn't make sense for a lot of the big pharmaceuticals.
Or even accessible, right? Like Jeffrey's saying, like what he had to do is probably not
replicatable.
Yeah, across in other countries, where they don't have all these resources available to them. He's got the lab, everything. The
cost.
So it's like you're in a prime situation to have that resources available. Have those resources available.
Yeah, it's a dilemma, isn't it? Yeah, I was fortunate, I suppose, that I had the finances to cover that and the inquiring mind, and
I want to shift gears a little bit. So
Yeah.
we've got a book on the table. Can you speak to us a little bit about how that came about and what the book's about?
From Cancer, Good Things Grow.
Yeah, it's a good title, isn't it?
great.
From cancer, the vaccine was grown. On my journey, I met this lady who was a bit spiritual, I suppose, and she looked a bit different. And I got talking to her, and she'd been actually told about the vaccine, about meeting me, and this guy who was having injections. I thought, whoa, where did this come from? She'd been to a medium, and the medium was giving her a session, and she said, "Oh, you're going to meet this guy, and he's having injections, and it's not for diabetes or drugs. It's the best thing since sliced bread." And then she was told about meeting me and this vaccine, which was not his injections I was having, and so I met her by chance one day at Mount Mornington, where our sons played table tennis, and got chatting, and then she used to do intuitive massage. So you give you a massage, but the room would be full of spirits, and she'd get information.
Could you see those spirits, or is it?
No, I couldn't see them. I had my head down in the towel. Anyway, years went on, and she said that they are saying that we need to get the message out there because the vaccine is meeting closed doors, And they said they'd like you to write a book. And the book was in 3 parts: Before Cancer, The Cancer Journey, Life After Cancer. But she said, it needs to be your decision to do it. I go, oh, fuck. I've been to university 10 years. I fucking hate books. I don't read books. I'm not a reader. The last thing I want to do is write a book. Anything. Oh, yes, I said, I'll consider it, And I thought nothing of it, went home. And maybe a month later, I was in bed one morning, a girlfriend had come over, and I sort of woke up, which is unusual when I have a lady friend over. I'd normally stay in bed, but about 5 a.m. I slipped out of bed and grabbed some paper from the A4 paper from the copier, and sat in the lounge and wrote out this big 10-page, 12-page blueprint for the book. It was just like automatic writing.
Just came out like a flow of consciousness.
All these points, chapters, and it was the perfect blueprint. And I probably could have said, I slipped back in the bed, and the standby light on the TV went from red to green, but the TV didn't come in. The university saying, yes, that's perfect. TV then went back to red again. Explain that. I can't explain that.
That is very strange.
So that was the blueprint for the book. So it was quite an easy process then to write, fill in the blanks, because it was perfect the way it was cross-referenced. I can't explain it, but it was. So that's how the book came about. It was to tell people about the vaccine was the purpose, because during this process the universe was telling me, yes, the vaccine is working. They said I'm like a pebble in the pond, proving this for other patients. So I don't know why they chose me, but
hopefully we can get this message out there with this.
Yeah, that was the purpose of the book, not to make money, but to tell people, well, the vaccine worked for me. Maybe it's worth considering for you. I can't say a vaccine's going to work, but it worked for me. Do I sit on my hands and tell no one about it, or you've got a duty of care? It's fix me. Like, I think that's got to be told. Now I'm almost blooming 76. Never been fitter and healthy apart from this bit of latest cancer which I'm dealing with, and it's amazing. To think I've got this gift of life after all these years. It's
amazing.
Amazing, yeah. I run rings around people half my age in the walking group, But that's how the book came about. So it's
Is there a way can people buy this book online, or is there a way people can buy it?
Just look on Facebook from Cancer Good Things Grow. Yeah, you can get it through there. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, my website, my Facebook page. Yeah.
Other than the Facebook page, is there anywhere else people can find out more about your story, or just about like resources you'd like to point people to?
I've been on House of Wellness. I've had a film done there that's been on Channel 10, I think it is. Yeah, but you can search that up. Just Google there's quite a few articles, radio.
House of Wellness.
If we Google Jeffrey Deslandes, will that come up?
Yeah. Or From Cancer Good Things Grow, Not too many of those around,
No.
Yeah. So,
What a story. Well,
That was incredible.
yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm sure we'll touch base again. I would love to, do this again another time. But yeah, thank you so much
yeah.
for coming on.
I guess one final word, I guess, when you're diagnosed with cancer, it's okay to be overcome with grief, but put the grief, once you get through that, like, get rid of that fear. Like some people are fearful of cancer. It's like it's a darkness. It's an unknown thing. And you've got to say, bugger that. I'm in control of my body. This is me. Don't let a little bit of cancer control you. So you've got to become in charge of you. Like, let me explain. Like, our body's made of 100 trillion cells. I can't even think of that many. 100 trillion, and you might have just a dozen cells cancerous.
Yeah.
So, and you're saying, oh, cancer. I've got cancer. Well, like it's a very small proportion of our whole body. Sure, it's got to be fixed, but why do we let this small number of cells be so important to us? It's a bit like your car. Say you've got a flat tire on your car out there. Oh no, my car's got a flat tire. I'm stuffed. No, you fix the tire. You take it to the mechanic and get that bit repaired. So it's a bit of your body that's gone wrong. It needs to be fixed. Can't be ignored. Don't bury your head in the sand. It won't fix itself. But don't let it bloody dominate you and become so fearful that you're going to die. Some people get cancer. They're so bloody scared. They're dead in a couple of weeks. And they just let it. That fear overcomes them.
I think that's a great point. So don't be afraid. Don't put a spotlight on an issue and forget everything else that your life that you have going for your life. And that, because even without cancer, people live in fear, and that holds back a lot of people, I imagine, too.
Yeah, get rid of that fear. Take control. Get the very best treatment you can. I met some interesting people at the clinic in Thailand that don't actually want to even acknowledge, they don't use the word cancer. They don't even, there's another belief that if you don't accept you've got it, don't accept you've got it, you haven't got it. So we think you've got cancer. Okay, I've got cancer, and then you have this sort of, but they refuse to accept that they've even got the cancer. They won't even.
They might be, I guess they're thinking, if I continuously tell myself every day, my brain's going to be, you've got cancer, it's growing, you're going to die. If that's the narrative every single day, that's probably not helping your situation.
You'll believe that. Yeah.
And then, you'll just potentially fast track the process of it growing further,
Yeah.
Or you could just flip the switch and say, hey, I'm getting healthier every day. I'm doing things to my body that are making it healthier. I feel fitter than ever. That sort of self-talk.
Sort of a mindset, of don't believe you've got it. It doesn't, not the same as saying you're ignoring it, but just don't give it the credence that you might give it. So it's, if it makes any sort of sense.
I think that's probably a good place to leave things. Don't be afraid, and go after and chase things, despite being scared or being afraid. Because it's worthwhile in many cases, and I think you're living proof of that. Yeah,
put the fear aside, and then if your doctors can't give you proper hope, then look for alternatives that can. Get on the internet, speak to people, speak to your local support groups. That most cancers now have a sort of national support group that have lots of information, and so you get the very best treatment you can. Give it your very, very shot. Because apparently you're only here once, and
So surround yourself with good, positive people as well, if you can, if you have a good support net. And if they're negative people, maybe, give them a break until you get better, right? Seek out education. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is king.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel fear, but, like you said, feel that fear and then move on anyway. Continue on. Don't let the fear control you. Start getting control of that fear.
Yeah. Surround yourself with positive people. I choose not to have any negative people in my life, and I have no anger in my life. So if someone's angry to me, I don't see them again. So I choose, where you can create your environment to be a happy one. Like if you're able to give up work, then, and if work was a problem, then give up work. If your relationship's bad, fix it or leave. You know, things like that. So try and improve your living conditions, I suppose, where you can.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much, Jeffrey.
Oh,
It's
you're
been a
welcome.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.